I'm sat here with the Cribs. Good to see you guys. We've just been chatting a little bit there off camera about London, and you mentioned Wakefield. I guess a good place for me to start is just asking, because you're all sort of dotted around different places of the globe now, how it feels to be back together promoting this new album, and maybe how it feels not just being London but the UK generally.
Because we've just come from a US tour, so we were together quite recently anyway, but I feel like when we get back together we snap back into, I mean, just, you know, even though we're apart a lot, it doesn't feel that like, you know, there's not like a transition period where we get used to stuff again. It's this just kind of feels like a continuation of what we were doing when we were on the US tour in some ways. But I miss the UK, you know what I mean? I miss it a lot, so I always enjoy coming over. Especially if there's a legitimate reason someone's like bringing us in, you know, it's something that I kind of look forward to, I would say.
After like our last record, Night Network, came out in 2020 during the pandemic, and everything was virtual, everything was like online, like done on Zoom, you know, like interviews done over email, all that kind of stuff. And there was this sort of prevailing narrative at the time that everyone was like pushing, like, oh, this is the future, this is how everything's gonna be like this from now on. Like not you know, like, you know, once life can go back to normal, people are going to maintain this sort of like, you know, this kind of remote working kind of thing. And in music, that and especially for a band like us, like, you know, which has always been like community oriented and part of, we've always like felt like music was like less an individual pursuit and more something that's like part of a communal culture. Like, we hated the idea of it being this remote thing. So like, when I'm at home in the USA, like working on the other end of the day as well, like, it's frustrating to be talking about like the record on email because you feel like it's just all hypothetical. So being back together, like talking about it, it's like, to me, it's actually a massive relief. You know what I mean? It's like it's really. I don't take it for granted at all. I like sitting with these guys and talking about it.
But the UK is always going to feel familiar, you know what I mean? There's never any like, you know, it's always going to feel like coming home, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I know that sounds like cheesy or whatever, but that is just still the relationship we have with it. It's not like we're avoiding it or anything.
It's not like we become Americanized and just, you know, it like, it's. We were just talking about like, especially London actually, like, it's, with it being the focal point of like the music industry and stuff, it's like whenever we're here, we're always like really busy and it's nice to be able to live in your record for a while. Like that's something that happens less now. Like when we first started putting records out, you could release it and live in it for a while, whereas now everything's so fast moving and everything's like, you know, the people talk about the attention economy and stuff. It just feels like it's here today, gone tomorrow. So like, we just like being in the center of things.
But you were speaking then about, you know, when the record comes out in the pandemic, for your last record, you don't really get a chance to sort of give it its full credit upon release because people are sort of housebound. A record takes on a whole new life when you've released it and then you go and play it live, right?
Yeah.
So that for this upcoming record now, you know, you just said you're coming back from US tour, you're playing some of those songs live. You're now experiencing again that kind of sense of the new life of this record.
Because the record is not just about us and the music that we make in the studio. It's about its relationship to people, because it's kind of like that whole if a tree falls in the woods sort of thing. And not to get too philosophical about it, but it's just like if you can make the greatest record in the world, but if it doesn't resonate with anyone and they don't have any sort of connection to it, then it doesn't really matter. And during the pandemic, like our Night Network, it may have resonated. Like people would tell us that they enjoyed it.
It was a completely different thing because like we were kind of being told, oh, you shouldn't put it out, just wait until stuff goes back to normal, you know. But at the same time, like everyone was pushing their records back because it wouldn't exist in like, you know, the normal paradigm, like, you know, because the pandemic had made that impossible. But I've always seen like a record as being and to me like the main like motivation behind doing it is it's like a degree of communication. So putting it out during the pandemic when everyone was housebound, it's like you can still have that connection with people. But it was different. It wasn't as satisfying for us, but I still think it made sense to put it out while we still cared about it.
It's a good point, and it was a form of communication in that way. But and my point was actually just that, like, without having any sort of connection to anyone, it's almost like it doesn't exist. So like getting to live within your album and getting to experience it with other people is the only thing that brings it to life. It's like otherwise it's an abstraction. It's like to us it exists. We know what the songs are about. We know that what our experiences were when we were writing them, but without it being reflected back at you by other people's engagement with it, it feels like an abstraction. You know what I mean? It's like it's always been more about communication and community for us than it has been about anything else.
Well, this upcoming record, Selling of Ive, being your ninth record, it seems to me that as a band you've kind of never really undergone an extended period of inactivity. You've always kind of made music and released it relatively continuously. So to have taken a big break or put back a record would not feel right for the Cribs.
But it's felt like, honestly, I know that like. Yeah, we have. You know, it's not like we've ever like officially like gone on hiatus or any of that kind of stuff. Because you know, with this being family, that would just be kind of ridiculous because it would be disingenuous. But the before we did Night Network, we had quite a long break because we were we'd got kind of a bit disillusioned with like a whole element of like the business side of stuff. So we had a break, but by the time that the pandemic had hit, that album had already been recorded for about a year, so it had to come out. Otherwise, we would have got over it. You know what I mean? If we'd have like got past it, it wouldn't have made any sense. But it's been 5 years since we did that one, even so. I do feel like we've had like more of a break now than what we usually do. I mean, it's not like we stopped like touring and doing shows and stuff, but we've definitely become a lot more selective about things, and we've slowed stuff down. I mean, we're not going to. I feel like there was a period where it was almost like we were on a treadmill. Like, you know, we'd do album, tour, straight into another album, tour, straight into another record, and we got really used to doing that. I think we get better results now when we just wait until we want to do it again, and it does take longer and longer every time to want to do it. But when you get to when you kind of like tick over into that point where everyone wants to make a record, you get it done really quickly and it's enjoyable, as opposed to just like, you know, you're feeling like you're on a conveyor belt, which we did feel like we were on a conveyor belt for a while. So this has been more enjoyable, and it's like the gaps are getting longer, but well,
the reason why the gaps are getting in the 2000s, particularly in the early 2000s, you're part of a culture. Like there's a culture around everything. Like that we were what we were working. Like the culture. What I mean is like between the venues, the bands, the overall youth culture that you're operating in means that like you have to record and release those music at that time because it's relevant to what's going on at that time. And if you don't, then it's like it's sort of a bit you miss that like initial excitement.
It's just missing a big facet of what makes it
resonate. Yeah, and then but then now that's not the reality anymore. Culture's more fragmented, and you sort of exist a little bit more. It's not centralized in the way that it was. So like for us, like making a record is something that it's less about it being part of a culture now, and it's more like we take more time over them and just do them when we want to do them, because it is more on our terms now. It doesn't have that same sort of necessity for it to exist as part of something that's going on at that moment. It could come out any time.
I feel like there was a certain it was like it was more implicit or like subliminal. Or it felt like an obligation to just keep putting them out back in the 2000s, whereas I don't think any of us feel that obligation at all anymore. So it's more a case of we do it when we feel like we want to do it or we need to do it or whatever. But that's a lot better. I feel a lot more comfortable doing stuff like that.
So with this record though, was there, having assessed how you operate as a band in that way, how do you look at that record and go, okay, this is what we want to make, this is how we want to make it, how it wants to sound? How did this sort of spark inspiration come in that sense?
Well, it's weird because we never talk about it, but I think it just goes through a period where like we'll finish doing a record and then we'll all go off and live our life. We've all got like completely separate lives. We all live like really different lives, but because we all grew up together and we're brothers, like there becomes a point after a few years where all of a sudden our like what we're into just starts aligning, doesn't it? You know what I mean? It's an unspoken kind of thing. Like when we started writing this record, we all wanted to make this exact type of record. I can't put my finger on. I can't define what it is.
Yeah, we didn't sit and have a conversation. Right? It's just like when we started, we were all we all had a similar idea of what we wanted to do with it. I don't know, like if any of that's like because of our closeness as brothers, or whether it's just because we react to the previous record in a similar way. But there wasn't really any conversation, right? And I think we only realised that we wanted to do it when you just like we do tend to have a bit of a break after records now. There's just a natural decompressing period of time, and then once that's done, you just feel like you want to work.
Yeah, but what I mean is, it's like we'll start talking about stuff like we start aligning on like more subtle things, like like the way that we were talking about what record we wanted to make next was like in abstract. It was like really abstract. Like it's like. Or it should sound like it's being played in the back of a Vauxhall Cavalier, or it should smell like the MGM Grand Lobby or whatever. You know what I mean? It's like real abstraction.
Yeah, what it is us three communicate through, and I'm not trying to sound. I'm not trying to sound like mystical about it, but like us three communicate like in a manner that's like it's informed by our shared experiences throughout our lives and throughout our childhood. So it's like, if Rai says, and your upbringing. Yeah. So if Rai says, for example, it should sound like it was, the sort of record you'd listen to in the back of a Vauxhall Cavalier, or if Ross says, this should be the sort of record that the cool kids in the arcade listen to. All three of us are like, I know exactly what that means. It's not like a specific thing. It's more like it's an evocative thing, and we all of us know what it is.
And it'll be like, it's weird that you say that because I've been thinking that too. And then we kind of know that that we're ready to start making a record.
It's a method of communicating that's like that's really, really, really effective because it's so specific, but it's so specific in what it actually means. But like the actual terminology sound like it sounds really vague.
Well, music is creative, so the way in which you're communicating is conducive to creativity. So it's not that abnormal to sort of lean into abstracts. Things to inspire.
Because outside that, you'd just be saying, I think we should make a more indie record.
This should be a heavier, darker record. It's like that's really specific, and it boxes you in.
But it's also so ham-fisted and
maybe contrived as well.
But brothers don't break. Brothers won't break. That was sort of the kind of a kernel of a bit of a sonic mission statement, would I be right in saying, from a jam you guys had?
To me, it seems like a really pivotal song on the record. Like that's my personal opinion on it. It's why it's the last track on the record. Usually, like the last track that we put on an album is usually the one that that we you want to end on
like
something grandiose. Like it ends up being like the last track of the record to us is not like somewhere where you just put something that's like it's one of the more important positions is what we would say, and that song it felt important to us because, like, for the main riff Ryan had for a long time, and then the chorus. Again, it's going to sound very mystical. The chorus came to me in a dream, like genuinely before we went to practice that day, and then when we put them two things together, it sounded really cool. And then we recorded it that one wasn't recorded in the studio sessions. It was recorded in my basement, and it was just me and Ryan hanging out together. I mean, the song was written like by the three of us together, but the initial recording was just done by me and Ryan, and. Like, you know, lyrically, it was really, really. It was the first time I would say that it was specifically about the three of us and our not just our relationship, but also our worldview. Because usually we don't really do that. It's putting too. I feel like that's kind of putting too fine a point on things usually, but I just. For the first time, it just seemed like that would be a good idea, and you know, the song's got kind of a soul sort of vibe as well, so it seemed appropriate to me.
Yeah, which is like, I mean, that harked back to like how when the band first started, it was always like this idea of like trying to like, you know, move away from like typical rock kind of tropes, like no distortion and like no power chords, you know, more like simple riffs or jazz chords and stuff like that, and kind of moved away from that for a while. And I never really understood, like, I don't really know how we ended up moving away from that being kind of
well, because the live energy becomes more important. But yeah, with soul songs are really honest when you listen to the lyrics, like of those, and so because this song, I felt like it was in that sort of spirit. I was like, we should just be like really honest and like and speak to like simple human emotions, you know, like, and usually kind of like hide away from that, be a little more abstract, but it felt appropriate, and that, I think that's why I'm really proud of it, if anything, because it's like it is more overt in that way, you know, and less, it's unabashed, I think.
Yeah, it's a lovely way to finish the record. And I think I've listened to the record a few times, and I've noticed a couple of things myself, sort of in line with how you've promoted it yourself. In terms of the word pop has come up a couple of times in how you view the record, and it's poppier. But I'm interested to see how you view the word pop as a sonic concept, because sure, maybe some of the hooks and the chorus lines have influence, but by no means will I put this on and say.
But specifically, what I think that I've always seen it as being like this like really broad term that means hooky, I suppose. You know, like when you've kind of focused more on hooks and trimmed the fat on something. You know what I mean? Like where it's not. You know, say if the best bit of the song is one of the riffs or one of the beats or whatever, you kind of try and place that front and centre and keep everything else out of the way of it.
Well, pop music is fundamentally. It's about the beat, and it's about the bass line and the riff. Like it's like the core ingredients. Like, you know, because you can have like a great pop song that's just a repetitive beat with a repetitive bass line and a repetitive riff. It doesn't hide behind anything. It's just like, this is the hook. This is what we want you to focus on, and that can also be a lyrical hook. That's what I considered. If we refer to pop, that's what it refers to. It just means that, like, and similar to what Ryan was saying, it's streamlined and it's lean, and there's not like layers and layers of stuff on there to like create. You're not trying to be clever, essentially. Like, it's like the well, not strictly true, but what I mean is like you put in the hook first, essentially. Like,
it's a different philosophy, that's all. It's not even necessarily a different sound. It's a slightly different philosophy, and it's like why we went with Patrick to produce it, because he like works with a lot of like, you know, more pop-oriented acts and stuff. We wanted to go with someone who was going to make like, which is, you know, something that, because we've lived with the songs for a while, someone who was going to identify, this is the best bit of this song, let's make this the focus. And we've done stuff like that in the studio before, and we default to this type of kind of like you know, kind of getting a little bit self-conscious or embarrassed about how hooky something might be, and kind of like burying it under you know, like more layers of stuff, or like feedback, or becoming very obtuse with the lyrics or whatever. And so we wanted to work with someone who's going to be like, no, this is the best bit, let's just focus on this and do that. And so the philosophy for this record was definitely you know, we refer to it as being poppy, but it was definitely coming from that place.
That's what I wanted to ask, if it's somewhat of a freeing concept for you guys, because of the background you've come from and the eras through which your music's existed, there is kind of an element sometimes for bands to fall into a trap of going, hey, I'm not going to write hooks like that because it seems poppy, but is it kind of a freeing thing to go, no, this is what the song needs?
No, because we've always been really focused on hooks. It's the only thing that excites us, really. Whether that's the riff or the melody, or the beat, it's the only thing that excites us. Like, because really, without that, it's just an exercise in indulgence.
No, but I do
really,
feel like though sometimes when we would get like, when we first started, we were more lean like that. But I think like later on we would start. You'd already have the song. You'd already have like the main bit and like like the good, like, you know, the hook, as it were. But we'd start like bolting other bits to it or whatever. Like we'd be like, oh well, we'll have like an A. You know, you've got this like great A section. We're like, oh, we need a B section and a C section, and then like a little tag, and like, you know, we just kind of. You know, you just kind of get into a habit of almost like not wanting it to be too simple, because you think like you know, you like almost like you had this feeling like, oh, I've got to work hard, I've got to prove more or something.
I think having a producer that will encourage you to be more streamlined, I think, is good for us. But we never ever shied away from pop. The only thing that it was that that we being a punk band, like, and playing and live, fundamentally being a punk band, meant that like sometimes our consideration of how things would translate live and how the energy would translate came ahead of serving the song the best. And I think this time we were just like, look, we think that the hooks are strong, and let's not worry so much about like the baggage of like how we're gonna translate that live. Let's just let the hooks be the main thing, because like, you know, live's obviously really important to us, but when I'm dead, no one will be able to see me live ever again, you know what I mean? But the records people may still listen to the records, so like
that's quite an interesting way of looking at it, though, because would your younger self in 2004
no, exactly, never would have done. And that's the thing. I think that is one shift in mindset. You realise that you're not going to do this forever. But when you're young and you're reflecting the culture, it was more important for us to be honest and sincere in our recordings, because we wanted them to document that time and reflect the culture that we were existing in. But now you're like, that's not our situation anymore, and you just like, all it really matters is that the work is as, not the work, I don't want to sound pretentious about it, but that what you make is served as best as it can be. That's all, you know what I mean? Because it's not like that. It's not like it's. I'm not in my early 20s in this really vibrant, like living, breathing scene anymore. Like the Cribs are just, we're lucky enough that we can still make our records all these years down the line, and all I really care about now is that the Cribs records are good. You know what I mean? That's the. It's more.
Yeah, I mean when like we made something like the New Fellas or whatever, we went in. You saw like, you know, you've been so sucked into the lifestyle that it actually serves you better to just record it live and quickly and just get it down, you know, as you are at that time. You know, that actually makes the most sense. But
trying to capture
the
the spirit
now we're not that self-destructive band anymore. You know what I mean? So it's like we've got to try and
trying to capture the spirit used to seem like the real ultimate end game.
We've got to kind of represent where we're at now.
Yeah.
Whereas now it's just like capturing letting the songs be the best that can be.
What song on the record then do you think can only exist on this 9th Cribs record from the place you're at in your life now that maybe would never have been written in a different period of your life?
Yeah.
I think any of the two singles would be, I don't feel like they wouldn't be fitting in any other era really. We should admit, it just kind of, shows that this record is a lot different to the other albums as well, as far as...
I'm just racking my brains trying to think of the track.
A good example for me would be Rose Mist, like this song called Rose Mist.
No,
like that I can't imagine us doing because it was built around a beat. It was built around a beat, wasn't it?
Just a drum loop on it. I can't remember, was it a drum loop?
It was built around a drum loop, and then we just let it just keep moving basically. And I think that I really really like that song. I think in some ways it's kind of my favourite on the record, but I also feel like it's sort of a bit of an outlier on the record as well in some ways.
And I don't know how we're going to play it. I mean, that's
Looking for the Wrong Guy's another example.
I was about to say, I feel like that's quite... I mean, vulnerability is not an exclusive concept of getting older, but it's an extremely vulnerable song.
Well,
right?
That song I wrote really fast, and it was really late at night, and so it came out, and I was uncomfortable with it for a while. I was uncomfortable with how on the nose it was, kind of, and then, but then I was like, man, this is what I should be doing. This is what I shouldn't feel. It's just natural baggage and self-conscience that you carry this stuff around, and it gets in the way of your best work, I think. And I think as we've got more experience and got older and stuff, I'm starting to realise that it's a lot of what my philosophy is based on is getting out of your own way. You know what I mean? You need to get out of your own way, and if stuff just comes out, then that's just how it is. I think that we could probably I think that musically and stuff, it's not a million miles away from stuff that I could have put on another record. But I think that the way that we produced it and the way that we presented it is definitely that it's not something I would have thought of in the past. I wouldn't have thought to do it that way in the past. In the past, I would have just done it just on an acoustic or something, But
what I would say is that this is our most honest record, and I'm saying that because there's a few songs where it's it felt they did feel uncomfortable, which is I think that's kind of normal. You should feel a little bit uncomfortable, and then you get accustomed to it. Because if you don't feel uncomfortable, then it's maybe other people won't find anything that they can latch onto because you maybe being a little bit too bolted down.
But I honestly think that that's part of what is exciting me about writing music now. That feeling of it being uncomfortable is actually the thing that I'm kind of getting hooked on, and that's kind of what's making me want to do it more.
Yeah, no, I agree, because again, you realise that your time is finite, and so you just that's what I was thinking about when I was writing lyrics on this record. I'm speaking for myself here, is that every single song is personal, either based on what was going on at the time, or they're based on things that happened in my life. So none of them are about any sort of grander subject. They're all about personal subjects, every single one of them, and so therefore to me it feels like a more personal and more honest record. But again, it goes to what we were saying, that you realise that that when you're part of something else that's going on, you can be more you can respond to stuff that's going on around you. But when that's not the situation, I have realised that if you're not going to be, I just want to be able to look back on the songs and be like, oh yeah, that I know exactly what it's about, and it was honest, and it might have been uncomfortable, but it's totally valid, because otherwise it'd be horrible to look back later and be like, oh, I hung on to some
Yeah,
stuff.
you want to
know
leave
what I
it
mean?
all on tape, don't you? You know what I
Even
mean?
if it's
You want to leave it
uncomfy,
all on tape.
I'd just rather
But
not
like
have
I
hung
said,
on to
no.
some of that stuff.
And honestly, that feeling of like it being uncomfortable, that's kind of like the motivating. I feel like
It's the thing
that's
that
the motivating
excites you,
thing.
yeah. And but that's all. That's just my. It's hard to talk about lyrics without sounding like you are being a bit like self-indulgent, because ultimately lyrics are quite self-indulgent. You're talking about yourself, but I think I was certainly outside my comfort zone a lot of the time when I was writing lyrics, but I'm really happy about that now in hindsight.
I feel like we've done a better job of getting out of our own way.
Yeah, I think there's a fine line between self-indulgence and intimacy, and I think this record, listening to it, is a very intimate record, and I think my take on it is that fans can clearly pick up on that, which then brings me on to the show you've announced in Leeds next summer, which, there's, it might not be directly, but we spoke a little bit about coming home to the UK and a bit of a homecoming atmosphere to the way you guys sort of feel about your music. How is that going to be in terms of playing that show?
Well, it definitely won't be in America, but
No.
like it's we did, we did it 10 years ago. We did the same place, like Millennium Square, 10 years ago, and that was like it's a real high point for the band, and I feel like we've often kind of like, especially on the last couple of album cycles, we kind of see that as being like the high point of the modern era. I say that like that has been like, when everything, I feel like in the 2000s when things weren't as online, like everything was fun then. But like after, we kind of saw Millennium Square as the last time we did it as being like this like high point of this like more modern era or whatever. So definitely like excited about revisiting that. I'm glad that we get to do it again, and I'm glad that like we've been planning on doing something in either Leeds or Wakefield on a grander scale for ages now, so I'm glad that we finally got something nailed down and like ready to go.
Yeah, we've done like last time we played like Peace All and stuff, and it's just nice to sometimes bookmark these and come back and like, I know some bands like to do like a big hometown show every year or something like that, but for us it makes it more special, like letting the band change and things and evolve, and then like do a and then put on one of these events again. And we're hoping to like last time we had Thurston Moore, didn't we, on the other one, and we're hoping to like bring along some like some friends or bands on the rest of the lineup and put on a real event.
We kind of see it as our chance to like with it being open air, it's our chance to like put on something that represents us in the centre of town.
Well, when we did it in 2016, it was like that was a really big night for us for obvious reasons, but the thing that we tried, like as Ross said, we had Thurston Moore support us, and which was also like a big personal milestone. But the reason why we wanted to make that happen was because when we were kids growing up in Wakefield, like 15-20 minutes away, if someone had said that Thurston Moore was playing a big outdoor show in Leeds, we'd have been like so excited.
It'd have given us a lot of hope.
It would have been talent, like a totemic thing to us, and so it was really that was one of the big privileges of getting to do a show like that. We were just like, let's try and make something that obviously it's our show, but like it just the ability to curate it means that like you could be like, let's try and make something that we would have been really excited about when we were younger, and like that's it's a huge privilege, you know what I mean?
Can I ask a question about this? Because we've spoken a few times, the sort of line of questioning and the answers have alluded to modernity and the online age. I feel like it's quite clear it's something that you guys not struggle with, or just that you see things in the modern world you don't like.
Well, what it is I feel like being in the band and the motivations for being in the band was all about this, like back when we started, it was about kind of doing our own thing. It was like, it felt countercultural, and you ended up finding other people that like did the same thing, and there was some kind of, it was almost like being in a band was the purest form of escape, or it was a way of getting out of normal day-to-day stuff. And I feel like the like since it's become more about socials and stuff, and you've got to be like comfortable with selling yourself and putting yourself online and all that kind of stuff. There's been all these elements that have been brought in that was antithetical to why I fell in love with it in the first place.
You used to need like those scenes were created. The reason why I used to get scenes in these cyclical manners was because they were created because you needed them. It's like if you were a band we're a three-piece band, we're pretty streamlined, but you still need a whole bunch of gear, and then so you need to be able to move that gear around. You need to have places to play. You need to like share things with people. So scenes develop because like bands need each other. Like there might be a band who wants to put a show on, but there's only one venue in town, so 3 or 4 bands will have to play together.
Only one of the bands has a PA.
Yeah, and only one band's got a PA. Then there'll be a guy who knows how to make posters, and there'll be a girl who's like a good photographer, and like so everything sort of comes together and coalesces like that. And that was the thing that drew us in, because like we didn't, we as teenagers we felt like outcasts. We genuinely did feel like outcasts, and you needed a place that you felt like you fit in. And so these clubs and these bands and these communities were like really supportive of people, really supportive places for people who needed that really. And it wasn't an individual pursuit, and you also buoyed each other as well, like from your confidence, but also like you drew from each other. Whereas online, it's harder because it feels like selling yourself and self-promotion, and that was something that we were never comfortable with.
It's funnier as well. I think that's the main problem.
Well, it's diffuse and fractured, and like and you're selling, as Rai said, like you're selling this idealized perfect thing, whereas the culture and the scenes that we were involved in were messy and imperfect and maybe fucked up and maybe like but that's why misfits gravitated towards it. And I just don't want to have to like feel like I have to compete against people in the straight world, because I didn't have to do that for like 30 years of my life.
Does this show and Leeds next summer kind of give you a bit of that again? Like you were saying, you're talking about first and more supporting in 2016.
Yeah, but that was for our sake. I mean, and like if you're going to play like a 6,000 capacity outdoor show, that's going to be a fundamentally different thing to like being part of a underground punk or alternative culture, but trying to put it in front of if you get the opportunity to be able to do that kind of thing, which we've been lucky to be able to have done, we always like want to make the best of it and value it and have it not be just something that's kind of cookie cutter, as best what we can. Because that's what just to represent us. That's all.
Because sure, things have changed, but there's still a way that you can play a show like that, and you can act somewhat as a bridge between the past and the present, especially how you guys.
That was always the most important thing for like when we were kids. We learned all of our. We only learned about bands and politics and anything that was fundamental to our development as teenagers came from like other bands would introduce us to like labels or other bands that they liked. That there was always this like sort of gateway thing. Like Nirvana being the ultimate gateway band, they turned us onto like all different record labels, all different like musical scenes and stuff. But also like we learned a lot of our politics from that as well. Like at an age when we were impressionable, and it always just felt like to us that like if you like that, on whatever level, it's just important that like a band is cognizant of the fact that you do have a little bit of that responsibility to like represent that more than just being self-serving. It's not just about a band, is it? Like the best bands ever haven't just been like an individual thing that happened in a bubble.
Dots. Exactly. Connect dots. That's all.
You just got to know your place in that culture. You're not the fucking king. You know what I mean? Or like it doesn't matter how big you are. Like it's not all about you. You know what I mean? It's just I know that sounds a little bit broad, but it's just it's we do come from a community-oriented place essentially, and I think that like when we were kids and we were cut off in a small town, our only line to the outside world was stuff that we learned through other bands really, and we benefited and learned and got so much out of that, like so much that like it's always been like a really important. Bands have always and music, and it's always been really deeply important to us for that, because like when we were teenagers it was really like it's the only thing we had, you know what I mean?
Are there any modern acts out there you see sort of in the community who you are encouraged by?
Yeah, look, there's definitely like there's plenty.
Yeah, obviously you're encouraged.
No,
totally
there's plenty going on right now, and it's just the only thing that we're not in any way being like trying to downplay any of that. Like it's just more that I think like just the more that things are online oriented, the more the less. Even though it might be disseminated more freely, I think that it can be less supportive for people who are just, because there's just so many more observers. You just feel more like an observer.
Bands are struggling.
You're an observer rather than participant.
I think that there is actually like stuff going on like with, you know, like band related, like Bob from France was telling me in London it's all like more house parties and stuff now, so there is obviously like things happening, and there is obviously going, you know, and some of the stuff he sent me to check out was good, you know, and so I think there is people that are doing it in a more of a you know, a visceral connected kind of way. It's just like, unfortunately, like the more mainstream outlets and stuff only really like shine a spotlight on people who are putting numbers up online, because that's their only metric.
Yeah, it's all metric oriented.
So
literally,
like you've squeezed out like anything that would be legitimately underground. You know, it's like it almost doesn't get a look in edgeways, because unless it's like gone viral or it's putting up numbers, like the gatekeepers.
Yeah, the gatekeepers
gonna gatekeep.
They have hardline, raw, basic numbers now. Hardline, like just hard digital data that tells them whether something's worth their time
monthly
or not.
streams,
And that's really that's really corrosive.
It's cold, man.
It's massively
It's
corrosive.
cold.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that, and I'm 1,000,000% sure that there's some really awesome bands out there, and there's probably kids that felt much like we felt when we were younger, because we weren't good at self-promoting and we were shy kids. I'm sure that there's so many that are like doing their thing and just like becoming demoralized by the lack of metrics that they're seeing, like either stream counts or reposts or whatever it might be. We didn't used to have that. We had a box of like 50 demos under the bed, and it'd be depressing that you couldn't sell them. But like, but that's fundamentally different than just sitting there and just like looking at a fucking like front end of a computer interface and just being like, oh, literally nobody cares. I've got the whole world, and nobody cares.
But,
you know, that's
but
hard
the industry
for people.
as it is, it's not kind to the meek. You know what I mean? It's like you've got to be someone who's putting yourself out there. You've got to be someone who's like happy to be like self-promote.
Really.
Yeah,
it's a peacock culture, so, and that's what's hard, because like scenes, like people like, why has there not been a scene happen, like a, you know, like a when I say a scene I mean like a unified sort, you know, like of thing,
when it like goes national or whatever.
But that's because those things come out of cities, because it's people who feel the same, who need each other, and then everyone else catches up with it, and that's why people can affect culture coming from a fundamentally outsider perspective, because they needed each other at first, and everyone else realised like, oh, what these people are doing is cool. And it's not about us, and it's not about like I'm not trying to be like a spokesperson for anything, but like it's not about us. I'm just saying it just makes me sad for the people. If we hadn't have had that, when we had very little in Wakefield, but there was something of a small local scene, and if we hadn't have had that, like we would have never even got to the point where we did anything. You know?
But do you not think that the overarching problems of the internet and online life give future bands something to rebel against, which ultimately is always the thing that does create scenes.
That would be really exciting. It's just the fact that like
the internet's like in the process of jumping the shark at the minute anyway. I think so. Like, you know,
I think AI will like make everything just like everyone will just realize like, what are we doing? You know, I think that'll be like a bit of a dividing line. But I do think that I have thought that for a while, that like, you know, that maybe we'll like create this sort of situation where there will be some sort of it will affect change in that way. But I at the same time, the problem is that like the outlets, the gatekeepers, they're just chasing the clicks, so they're not really that bothered about. I mean, maybe some of them are bothered about it, but like I think like it's this idea of like grassroots stuff happening. It's like a grassroots thing now is like, oh, this kid went viral, and so therefore the self-made success story. Fair enough, you know what I mean? Fair enough, but that's an individual pursuit. It doesn't help. It doesn't help create a community or a culture around it, really.
So with this record, to tail off with this record, then in light of how the music industry is in the world in a minute, how would you want this record and the subsequent shows to be received by people who listen to it? What change, if any, would you like it to maybe affect?
It's always the same for us. Just that we care about the records we make, and we hope that people like them.
And it's still stuff like, you know, we still write stuff all together in the old-fashioned way, where it's like, you know, the magic comes from us all being in a room together, you know, and like I'd like it if like that comes across, and like, you know, the dedication to the craft comes across, and you know, maybe you know, like I don't even like,
well, it's like we said,
rock and roll. You know, it's like I just really like to remind people that rock and roll is you know, still one of the purest art forms as far as I'm concerned.
I think that like it's like we said at the start, like when we release a record, if you don't have it reflected back at you by people hearing it, and like by having that interaction, that direct interaction with a fan base, or not even necessarily fan base, just an audience that like that takes time to like listen to it and or see you at shows or whatever. It's almost like it doesn't exist. You know what I mean? And I think that's our prevailing feeling. It has always been a community thing. So it's like that's really, when we release a record, that's all that really matters. Really, it's just that's what brings it to life. But otherwise, it's just like it doesn't exist without other people. It's like, you know, that's how we feel about it. It's the only reason we do it.
Well, good luck with the release, and good luck with the shows next summer and the shows upcoming. I really enjoyed the record. It's a great record. Great to see a band still going. So thank you.
Thanks
Appreciate
a lot.
it.